Welcome to Built with Purpose. I am Chris Fay, and this is the show where vision meets execution and leadership leaves a legacy. From design studios to innovation hubs and product lines to skylines, we meet the people building more than great companies. They're creating culture, driving impact, and shaping what's next. These are the stories and strategies behind how the world gets built with purpose. All right, everybody, welcome to Built with Purpose. My name's Chris Fay. I am the host of Built with Purpose, and this is a unique episode that we're going to be running today because we're actually running this from our company's kickoff meeting. We are sitting in the middle of the Bon Secours Wellness Arena with 16,000 seats, and we're taking up about 100 of them. So it's a pretty cool opportunity. We're talking to our team about thinking bigger and what it means to be thinking about the next evolution of growth inside of our business, and also the next evolution of growth for each one of us. So this is a special episode that we're doing today, a little bit self-serving, but will be a lot of fun. So with me today is Kirk Zambetti. His last name does rhyme with YETI, and yes, he did used to work at YETI, which is why that makes it so much fun for me. So Kirk, welcome to the show, my friend.
Thank you, Chris. Appreciate you having me. I will say the kickoff was great.
Awesome.
I mean, 45 minutes, you had a lot to cover. First off, congratulations for what you guys have accomplished so far.
Thank you.
So,
appreciate that.
Really strong start, for sure.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate that. One of the things that most people know about me is that I'm not great at short answers. So I kind of prep everybody that if you ask me a question, I tend to give you more than you want, but it's so I was proud of myself. Did 45 minutes. It's usually an hour and 15.
He gets a gold star.
Yeah, gold star, maybe a silver star. Well, Kirk, awesome, man. I'm fired up to have you on. Funny enough, my water bottle says fired up. I didn't realize that I say the word fired up as much as I do until I started recording myself on a podcast, and then Mackenzie made me this water bottle at Procore. So, but anyway, so Kirk, I'm excited to have you on today, man. I know when you and I were prepping on this, there were some conversations that we had that were like very synergistic to what we're trying to do at TPM. But I think first off, like just high level, man, give us a little bit of insights in who you are and what you've been doing and what you up to today.
So originally from Jacksonville, Florida, Ponte Vedra Beach area. Went to school at Hampton-Sydney College of Virginia. Trying to get Cooper to go there now. He likes hunting and fishing. You can find a place there. Have 3 boys, a 30-year-old who's given us our first grandbaby, Georgia, by far the cutest baby on the planet. And they live in Collierville, Tennessee. Then we've got another son out in San Francisco working for Snowflake. Big AI data warehouse plan. So I don't know if you guys will ever need Snowflake, but it could happen.
Get us a discount on Snowflake?
No, you just got to get bigger. Full price for you. And then my youngest is at Alabama, junior, having a ball. So roll tide. But I've been married for 34 years, moved 13 times. Moving to Lake Kiwi was our 13th and final move. I told my wife I'm leaving that in an ambulance or a Hertz. And so real excited to be back in the Carolinas. Love the Carolinas in general. Grew up going to Highlands and Cashers a lot out of Jacksonville. And actually, we probably drove past Lake Kiwi all the time, never knew it was there. And then you see it and you're like, yeah, I'm not leaving. So beautiful place here in the upstate. Love it.
Awesome. Yeah, Lucky 13.
Lucky 13 is the name of the house.
Is it really?
Yeah.
See? How funny is that?
That's actually freaky that you brought that up.
Yeah. See, meant to be is something that Casey's dad talks a lot about, is meant to be. So
yeah, I do my own moonshine version of Fireball too that is branded Lucky 13.
No way.
Yeah.
So did you brought some for me to take home?
No, but we can negotiate a recipe later.
Okay, good deal. Awesome. Well, you've had, just learning about you from our conversations and also just from some of the research that I've done, like you've had an awesome career.
Thank you.
And have made like amazing impacts in the companies that you've been working with. And then obviously you finished your career at YETI, which I am just a YETI loyalist. I tend to be. You and I had, oddly enough, the exact same backpack. I thought that was funny. So just give us a little bit of insights in your career history, what you've been doing. And
so started off in a small family business, Zambetti Steel Products, and then worked there all through high school and college, and then transitioned into medical supplies, medical device, dental equipment, imaging equipment. And I was in that space for about 25 years. Spent most of my time at Danaher and another company called PSS that got bought by McKesson. But Danaher was a huge probably, if I look at my whole career, I would say it was my favorite part of my career from the standpoint that I had a lot of energy and I had a lot of enthusiasm. But as a sales executive and even as a salesperson, someone who was always kind of an optimist, I lacked process and discipline in how I approached my job, but also how I led my teams. And at Danaher, that became very clear that you embrace it or it'll kill you. It'll literally, you'll get run out of the business. You can't keep up. The pace is way too quick. And then one of my bosses at Danaher, when he was a divisional president, I was his head of sales for North America. A few years later, we kept in touch. He's a Notre Dame guy. My dad was a Domer, so we'd always talk about football games and text back and forth. And then he texted me one day and just said, "Hey, weekend ruining question, will you and Amy move to Austin, Texas?" And I knew he was at YETI, but I was like, "Man, I'm not leaving. I mean, Danaher's doing great. Things are good." And then he said, "Well, why don't you come in and at least meet everybody?" And 13 days later, I resigned from a job I never thought I'd leave. And then when I walked into the doors at YETI, great brand from a consumer perspective. Internally, tons of stuff to fix. A lot of things that were broken, no processes. Great people, no process. Phenomenal product, once again, no process. So I had a lot of work there to do to kind of rebuild that business internally to be sustainable and to grow. And then we were able to really get the business firing back on all cylinders. It matched the level of the quality of the brand. And so in October of 2018, we took it public. And it was currently, when I joined, I was hired by private equity to go in and help, along with 4 or 5 other key executive hires, to get the business back on track with the CEO. So it was a fun ride.
Yeah, and so what was that? I mean, obviously working for larger organizations, people that are wanting to grow. You're coming into companies that have, there's process change and things that need to happen. Like, how did you emotionally deal with that? Were you excited? Were you fearful? Were you confident? Like,
different stages of my career, I would say all of the above. YETI, it was more of a no option but to succeed. Having sold our house in Charlotte, sold our mountain house, ripped my youngest out of 6th grade and said we're going to move to a new school in Austin. And just doing that move at that point in time, knowing that things at Danaher were so good, and to take that risk, when I got to YETI, there was, I would say, more fear of failure wasn't there. It was, I have to succeed. Yeah. And so there was a mindset where every day, optimism based with a little bit of reality. Like, let's make sure we're measuring what we're managing. Let's make sure we're actually tracking. Let's make sure we're all on the same page. Let's have a conversation and align on priorities for this week, for this month, for this quarter. So very intense, very dialed in. I would say if you talk to we call ourselves Yetisons, if you talk to Yetisons that worked directly with me, they would say, they were to ask him one word, they'd say, he's intense. And my wife would probably say the same thing. So, yeah, I'm intense. But it was about doing the best we could for the business and really get the business back to the equivalent of the brand. The brand at YETI was always so strong, and at that point in 15, 16, it was really taken off, mostly because of the drinkware. We had to figure out how to really get the business performing internally with processes and with the great people that we had, because the culture was amazing, but it was misaligned to what we were trying to accomplish sometimes. And so it was having those adjustments that we had to make to really make the business not only profitable, but sustainable from a standpoint that we could get it to go public.
It was funny when you said intense. So before I came to TPM, I was in the construction industry, and we would always joke around having the big eye. You could like walk by somebody's office, and they'd be like, "You got the big eye," and I would always get the big eye. And so my boss at the time would walk by, and he's like, "You got the big eye," and I'm like, "That's an L you're putting on your head right now. That's not an I." And I was like, "I don't know if you're calling me a loser or if you're telling me that I'm intense," but we used to talk about that. You'd have the big I, right. And it means like no small talk, don't bother me. Like I'm in the mix of what I'm trying to do.
Yes. Yeah. No. So one of the things that I've done my whole career, this even goes back to right out of college. There's assessments I've used for myself, but also for my team, and even when we're hiring or helping drive development plans. And in that assessment, one of them is a DISC assessment. I'm sure you've heard of DISC. Mm-hmm. I'm what's they call an Uber D.
An Uber D, yep.
I'm like 96. And my I is barely above midline, and then my S and C are non-existent, like 15.
Yeah.
So
it's just DI. There's no SC.
We're getting stuff done. I'm going to drag you through it, or we're going to do it together. You choose. We're getting it done.
So you walk into Danaher, even new, but also you walk into YETI, and you got all this experience. You're doing all these things. They're having you come in to lead the sales organization. Like, what is the first? How do you manage that change? Like, what does that first 100 days, that first 90 days look like for you? Like, how do you spend your time when you're coming into a new environment that's needing that level of influence and change?
So the way I tackled it was really spending a lot of time talking to folks, as simple as that sounds. And that means if I was dealing with customer service, I would sit with customer service people for half a day and just desk travel, hear the calls, have my own headset, listen to what's going on, understand the issues, go over to tech support, do the same thing, hang out with product development, obviously go co-travel with the sales team, go meet different levels of customers. And I was really at that point for the first 30 days just taking in as much information and some people would call it noise, but a lot of it, if it was repeating itself and I was hearing it again and again, well then there's fire there. There's something really to take action on. Occasionally you have the one-off stuff. I call that really noise you just filter out and you maybe hold it out there and say, okay, does it repeat itself later? But it was really that voice of the customer, internally and externally, that I had to listen to. And then it was a matter of also assessing the talent. And the talent has to match the process. I'm a big fan of, you can have great people poorly coached and they won't do well. But you take great people, well coached, and you can change a lot. University of Indiana right now would be a great example, right? Great coach, took good quality athletes who wanted to be there, and they've made a magical season out of it. Absolutely killing the Tide, which was brutal to watch.
I think they're going to win it all, too.
I think they're going to win it all.
I don't think there's any stopping them.
No stopping it all. That was impressive.
No first-round draft picks. I mean, just taking...
No 5 stars.
Right.
It was unbelievable.
Right.
But the thing that I did, and I did it with a lot of I've immediately also tried to establish relationships with folks that have been there a long time because I wanted tribal knowledge. I wanted to understand, hey, why are we doing this today? How did we get here? Why is this important? What's not important about this? What makes this sacred? What doesn't make this sacred? How do we get here kind of thing? And understanding that and having those honest conversations was really important. I was lucky enough at YETI to spend a lot of time with the 2 founding brothers. And so they taught me a lot of just kind of how they got started and then how that story and kind of that culture bubbled up through the organization as they grew.
So when you walk in there and you've got all these challenges to overcome, how do you make sure that you're, whatever the analogy is, of your mouth big enough to eat, like you could probably attack 1,000 different things at one time. Like, how did you all prioritize and really focus on the things that would move the needle?
So at the end of the day, revenue's pretty important, but revenue's only good if it can be repeatable from a standpoint that here we are selling to dealers and we're selling directly to consumers, but if it's a one-time situation, then that's not good. So I had to assess the dealer situation pretty quickly. At the time, we were very heavy dealer-based. But the way that I managed my priorities around that was really a philosophy I got when I was at Danaher, which we had weekly 1-over-1s. So my boss, Matt, the CEO, who's currently the CEO, he and I would meet weekly. And it was about an hour, which was great because he had 8 direct reports. But I would come to him ahead of time with an agenda, and I would say, here are the updates that we don't need to talk about from week over week. But here are the things we do need to talk about and need help with you on prioritization, because this is the order I would put them in, but I need your input. And those conversations did 2 things. One, they grounded he and I together on we're aligned. And by the way, I would say, if you do this with your boss or you do this with your teams, if you have 80% alignment, you're doing great. If you go for perfection and go for 100%, you're going to burn daylight on the wrong stuff. But because there's some stuff that as a sales guy, I was like, I got to go do this anyway, whether Matt says it's a priority or not, right? In your function, you're the expert. But for me, that was huge from an empowerment standpoint because it would allowed me to move more quickly. If he and I were aligned, then if there was something that was fairly significant the board needed to be alerted to, or we needed to talk about at a board meeting or the executive team level, we worked very much like an executive team. There was never just Matt or just me. A lot of times I would make sure the whole executive team was involved, even if it didn't impact them, because you never know the unintended consequences of a change could have a ripple effect.
Yeah, with other departments.
Absolutely.
Right.
Collateral damage unintended is bad news.
Yeah, I can only imagine. And then how did y'all, I mean, just thinking about, you're in charge of the sales organization, but you mentioned like other teams and other people. It's very easy probably to come in and just be focused on sales, but like how much weight did you put into relationships kind of across the aisle, right? With whether it be manufacturing or production or whatever it was. I mean, how'd you attack those?
Yeah, that comes back to how I was raised, honestly. At Zambetti Steel Products, it was one team. Everybody did a lot of stuff. Small company, family owned, competing against Georgia Pacific, and my dad was the CEO, president, and purchaser. I would walk in and he would be at all hours of the day and night talking to people in China and buying steel or buying stuff from Taiwan or Germany or wherever it was, and then, playing golf with somebody up in Charlotte or Pennsylvania trying to, do a deal. So everybody wore a hat and usually had more than one or two. So, I mean, the point of saying that is when I got to Danaher, you had to cooperate and you had to be on a team because there was never, if you siloed yourself functionally, you missed out on all the opportunities for growth and improvement. Personally, but your team would get penalized to some extent. So teamwork was required. And at YETI, I would say that I saw that probably in its best form. I mean, that group of employees is incredibly cohesive with minimal silo.
Yeah, I think about like in our organization, we have a much smaller organization. How many employees were there at YETI when you left?
I think 900.
So
not including retail associates.
Right, kind of passing down the line. But you just think about how easy it is for silos to be created even inside of our organization, between sales and purchasing and accounting and technical, and just the value of those teams coming together as one organization. And I love kind of going back to the Zambetti Steel story, and because one of the questions that I wanted to ask you, when you and I were prepping for this, you were telling me about Zambetti, and the quote that I've got is that people pay more when the product is better. And you were talking about competing against kind of the big, what I would call Goliath, right? And you all might be the David in the space. So what was that like? Tell me a little bit about.
I mean, it was a first lesson in integrity. My dad never compromised on price. He would always charge the price he needed. He knew that was fair, but it might be competitive, but it'd be on the higher end of the range. But we could deliver to a job site the rebar, the wire mesh, the TNC piping, all of that, at whatever configuration you want and however you wanted it palletized. It would be on site at the time you wanted it, no later, no sooner. And our whole job was to make sure when we delivered that your team that was doing the build had exactly what they wanted when they needed it and no sooner, because as you know, job sites are messy. So you don't need something sitting around and possibly getting damaged or getting relocated. So our drivers were great, and they were instructed to do everything above and beyond, and we did charge more. At the same time, if you wanted rebar, for those that know rebar, if you want rebar, number 2, cut at 24 inches for the local gardener, that would have been me in the yard under the oak tree, snapping piece by piece by hand. That's what you do when you're, 15 years old. And
you were an early rod buster.
I was the early, nothing. That was brutal. 100-degree weather, snapping rebar.
There was
at the time, I weighed about 120 pounds. So I'm hanging off the bar trying to
get it to break.
Yeah.
There was a guy that I used to work with. He was the lead superintendent for this big rebar rod busting company, and his name was Hippie. He had this long beard, and he had this long hair, and older guy, and high speed, like just ran like a really tight ship. And back then we had Nextel cell phones. So I had the Nextel, and the way we communicated was just via the cell phones. You'd like, hey Kirk, back and forth. Well, I was a project manager, so I was sitting in the construction trailer, with I might be the owner and the developer and all these people, and Hippie had no filter. No filter. He would always just interrupt. If he had a question, he would just interrupt you, right? You talk about like fragmentation. Hippie was a fragmenter. And he would always hit me, and he'd be like, hey, Chris, how about you, Chris? I'm like, hey, hippie, I got to call you back. Well, hey, I just had a quick question. I'm like, hippie, I got to call you back in just a little bit. Well, hold on just a second, I got it. And I'm like, hippie. And so I would take my phone, I'd throw it in my office because he was always interrupting me. So anyway, that's my rebar story. Sorry to digress there. But
hippie would have drove me crazy.
Hippie would have drove you crazy, yeah. He was good, though. He was intense.
Yeah.
He got the job done. You actually might have liked him. Yeah. Longer hair than you have.
For sure.
One question.
I'm due for a haircut. I keep it pretty tight.
That's what I do. I try to also. So, loaded question. I know the answer to this, but I'm teeing this question up for the audience. So, at Zambetti, you all chose to, and actually probably at YETI and probably at Danaher, probably through your career, you all have never been the cheapest person on the block. You've had kind of a premium product that y'all are willing to sell to, and I'm just kind of tying that back to our business, right? You know, did every customer buy from you? Did every customer see the value? And why do you think that through Zambetti and everything that you've done, why was that premium priced product, that kind of next level of quality and delivery, why did that work so well?
Well, I think on a personal level, I think it ties back. Has anybody ever heard of the term money story? So, nobody. All right, so a little quick lesson. I was raised in a family where if you wanted to buy something that you were going to keep that had value, the first thing I bought myself was a set of golf clubs. And they were Jack Nicklaus Muirfield, and they were about $600 back then. So present value, this is 78. Present value, $600. It's not an inexpensive. Makes PXGs today look inexpensive. My dad said, hey, that's great. I agree with you. Premium club, great product. You'll have them for at least a decade before you'll replace them. You go save the money. And the lesson that he really taught me was, one, I got to work for it, but the bigger thing was he said, buy premium, buy the best you can afford, because then you'll never apologize for it. And when you buy the best, it usually comes with the best support. It has typically, I'm not a big warranty guy, but it could potentially have good customer service, tech support, whatever it might be. So you get what you pay for. And when I think about that money story, I was raised always thinking, buy the best you can afford, and if you want something and you want a particular brand or version of, then save for it so when you get it, it even has more value to you. And you're going to take better care of it. And I taught that to my sons, which has been expensive in some cases, but especially with hunting gear. But I will say my wife was she was the opposite end of the spectrum. Her money story is different. She was like, what's good enough is good enough. Hand-me-downs are fine. We're going to just go with what works. And so, as we've got married, obviously we've been married for 34 years, so it's working. There's negotiations and in some ways she's learned that premium matters, and in other cases I've learned premium maybe doesn't matter, and there's a little bit of negotiation there. But I think whether it's Zambetti Steel, definitely at Danaher, we had all of our brands I represented in all 9 sales teams. We were number 1 or 2 in the marketplace. So crazy, some really cool cutting edge technology, all in the dental space. I'm sure you guys would love to hear about that. And then in the YETI, obviously, was a whole nother. That was a whole nother level of just premium. Yeah. So, have I been asked why do you charge $400 for a cooler? Because it's the last one you'll ever buy.
Well, and I think it just on the receiving side of it or the purchasing side of it, you just also think about. Because I'm kind of a brand guy. There's certain things I'll save money on, but then there's things I'm willing to spend the extra money on. Right. And one thing that YETI has taught me, I've had a cooler replaced twice, no questions asked. Mm-hmm. My backpack has already been replaced once. It works. It's quality. I'm willing to pay for something, especially that I'm going to use. You know what I mean? Yep. And I think about kind of the tie to our business is what we bring to the marketplace is not a convenience for our customers, right? Whether we're branding their space, whether we are, implementing a piece of technology inside of their business. We're serving and selling business critical pieces of delivery. And I think sometimes we kind of get caught in, we have to be the most price competitive. Everybody has to buy our products. Why did this person go shop us online for the next cheapest thing? And what I go back to is, having a company that values delivering something premium and willing to charge for it, and then aligning with the customer that is willing to consume that. But if the customer, i.e. if your wife is looking for something low value, she might not be the right fit for a premium value product. And so I'd like to just kind of talk to you a little bit about, we call it kind of the ideal customer profile approach, and not every customer is the right customer for us. They're just not.
Yeah.
And so finding ways for us to align with the right types of customers that will see value in what we have to offer, so that we can charge premiums, so that we can go above and beyond, deliver the level of service and support that we want to deliver as a company, but also that our customers would like.
So this goes back, something my dad taught me. It's not a negotiation unless you're willing to walk away. So I've walked out of a lot of conference rooms and just said, hey, this has been great. There was one down in Augusta at a golf course you might have heard of, and I walked out of that. And I think most people would say, what, are you crazy? No. I walked out, got on an airplane, and went back to Austin and said, hey, we're not doing that deal. So it's one of those things where you got to pick and choose your clients, and you got to pick and choose. You got to think about it this way. And one of the things I say when you talk about thinking bigger, think of TPM as a brand, not a business. So every day, what I would ask if I was in your shoes is, what are each of you doing to add to the brand? And are our clients adding to our brand? Meaning, will we get referrals? Do they love us? Will they support us when we make a mistake? Because that's going to happen. At the same time, when they make a mistake, are we going to support them? And is there truly a trust, long-term vision, relationship-based kind of situation? But brand is way more powerful than business. The reason I say that is it has emotion attached to it. And one thing I would never do, whether it was at PSS or Danaher with all the brands we had, or YETI, I would never jeopardize the integrity of the brand. In fact, many cases I created dealer agreements that were so strenuous and so many processes of how to become a dealer that most folks would wash themselves out of the process. Or if we gave them a chance, they wouldn't succeed long term. And at the end of the day, it wasn't that we were forcing people to do it. We were like, hey, we're going to match your effort. We'll match effort, but we're not going to give all the effort and then you give us a little bit. And by matching effort, we know that there's truly a relationship here where I trust you, you trust me, you got to do some stuff, I got to do some stuff, but we're going to do great things together. So that's a huge part of really changing that game. I'd say one thing about the ideal customer profile I did want to write down, and this once again I heard for the first time today. Be careful as you guys build that out. I would love, it'd be interesting to see if it sounds like you do a lot of group think where you'll get folks in the room and just fastball some stuff around.
Yeah.
But when you do that profile, make sure you let the fringe players have a shot in. Because some of those fringe players that today might not qualify as your ideal profile could tomorrow. And you don't want to offend them or isolate them or tell them they're not good enough. So just make sure you give people a way in. Show them the path and show them what that looks like and decide whether or not you can help them get there or if this is really just apples and oranges, right? It just doesn't fit. The one thing I'd say too is there's just risk in being too literal around that. So one of the things that I love black and white, but the reality of it is a lot of stuff's gray. And a lot of people will see, you are talking about success factors and all that other stuff. If you're very literal and you're not using some interpretation around that can be challenging. So just be really careful as you build out that ideal customer profile that it's got wiggle room for what's possible.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's great, because I think when we probably started a bit on the ideal customer profile, we probably got a little too myopic, at first, as a probably intentionally to just drive home the point, because I think it's hard for all of us. This concept of ideal customer profile is tough. Yeah. I was going to ask you about, you went from, this dealer thing, 700 dealers down to 40, and grew the business. And it's hard, especially if you're a salesperson or a support person, in the way our company was founded. So my father-in-law, Jerry, was, there was a sign he had inside of the business that said, you can't ever tell a customer no, right? And our value was service. But the reality is, as we've grown, it's hard to deliver the same level of value and service to every customer type that's out there.
Right.
And so that's where we've tried to kind of challenge ourselves, especially as we think about growing like nationally, is we have to pick a lane that we can be very successful at. We can tell a differentiated story. We can have those relationships and that value. But I love what you said about the fringe, because I know we've had customers come work for us or buy from us that, you know, they're a startup business. And by all nature, you'd say, well, a two-person startup company, you know, probably not the right fit for us. But those two-person startup companies have ended up being, you know, 30, 50, 100-person organizations. So I think that's where kind of the fringe comes into play.
Yeah, I mean, one of the strategies I did at Danaher was, and this is the one where we went from 700 to 40, is the first thing I did was I met with our corporate attorney, which most sales leaders would be like, why would you meet with the attorney? Well, I'm like, well, I just need to make sure from a Robinson-Patman standpoint, which is a little detail you don't need to know, but it talks about fair trade. I wanted to make sure the changes that we're going to make were the best interest of our customer. So if I was a dentist in San Antonio, Texas, could I get access to products from Danaher with a local dealer, a regional dealer, and a national dealer? In other words, could I have choices, not just be forced to deal with one player? And that's really what I created. And in doing so, I was able to shrink down, and Danaher's publicly traded, and they thought I was a little crazy, but I did it, and we grew. The market was growing about 3% that year. We did 7%. The sales guys got a lot more effective, calling on less players, putting more effort into the right ones. And the dealers knew that we were going to back them up, but they had to cover their geography, and they had to support us properly, or there was going to be further change, or we were going to look at bringing somebody else in to replace them. It was honest conversations. It was very transparent. There was no secrecy or sneakiness about it at all. It's what I did at Siemens. It's what I did at Danaher, and honestly, it's what I ended up having to do at YETI as well, just really changing the landscape of how the distribution business and the channel management was done.
You said like some of the folks in corporate.
I can't believe you're not cold, by the way. I mean, this ice is...
Are you cold?
I'm freezing.
You need to toughen up, Kirk. Yeah. You said you were tough and intense, man. I thought you could put up with the ice.
I am intense, but it's cold. I might put my coat back on.
Yeah, you good. But so I remember you kind of telling me the story about 700 to 40, and obviously you go to the CEO or the board, and you're like, hey, we're going to get rid of 80% of our folks out there, and like, how did you overcome? You believe something that in order to give the right partners probably the best service and enable them to grow and have the best relationships, you have to get rid of some of the noise. Were there naysayers? How did you overcome the naysayers?
Yeah, no, I mean, at Danaher, so Danaher for those who don't know it, it's a financially driven business. The CFO in every business is kind of the main guy or gal. If the CFO says no, it's a hard press. So I just met with the CFO and told him what I was going to do. And I think at the time, I don't remember the number, but it was a pretty significant revenue annualized. But I said it's not repeatable. And the similar thing happened at YETI. Now the good news is my president that I worked for at Danaher saw me do it and do it successfully. So when I came to YETI and said, hey, I want to do the same thing, but obviously in a lot bigger scale, Matt was very supportive. At the end of the day, it's about making sure all of our investments, whether it's marketing dollars, sales team, customer support, tech support, installation, all that, is it happening with the right players that are doing right by our brand? If not, they're actually devaluing and eroding our brand at the customer level, and that's unallowable. We can't let that happen. So it was really about making sure we're building around, what I would call partners of strength or clients of strength.
Yeah, and I just think about, for us...
Because that's repeatable.
Right. Well, and I think also that, when you're acquiring customers, if you can show them a bunch of passionate other customers that have appreciated the brand and are loving the brand and willing to maybe even talk about it, you know what I mean? That it gives them so much more comfort to partner. And I challenge us to think about, our customers. I mean, would our customers across the business, would they advocate on our behalf? Would they put a social media post out there telling the world how much they appreciate working with our organization? And I don't know that they would in every regard. And I would want to challenge us to ask the questions why. Why would our customers not be willing to publicly make a statement or a stand for any part of our business. And we've got a lot of great customers that would, but there's probably some that don't. And I kind of go back and just wonder, to some extent, are we able to give the right customers the level of support and service that they need to help them grow their business, right? Are we spreading ourselves too thin? Are we putting the customer first? Are we thinking about, the customer and kind of their mindset and how to make them successful? Earlier, like I told, if we can make you all successful, the company's going to be just fine. Similarly, if we can make our customers successful, we're going to be just fine. So I love when you went back and just said, the brand is more powerful than a business. And if we think about our company, TPM, Treble Hook, Color Lab, whatever, as a brand, and we really challenge ourselves to say, how are we representing ourselves? Are our customers willing to step out there on a public platform and advocate on our behalf? And if they're not, why is that? And what do we need to be doing differently?
Yeah, no, I can't agree more. Here's what I'd say. We did a dealer survey every year. We did it only a couple times at Danaher, but we did it once. Second year I was at YETI, and then we did it every year after that, and we would compare. And even if we were doing things like changing pricing or changing product lines or dealing with, product getting discontinued and a new product going out, and we might have made mistakes that year, right? We're definitely not going to do things perfect. You show me a perfect business, I'll tell you one that doesn't make money. So at the end of the day, these surveys, what became very consistent is one of the questions we asked is, would you recommend to other non-competing retailers, keyword non-competing, to carry YETI? And over 90% of our dealers would consistently tell other people. So that's somewhat like a net promoter score, right? And then when you think about when we would ask them in your store, and it could be, pick your dealer, outdoor retail, it could be a sporting goods store, it could be, Mass General Store was a great regional dealer for us. You talk to these folks and they're like, you're one of our top 5. When everything else fails, YETI always sells. And the reason why is we have the trust of the consumer. So if your client is trusted by their customer and you're a trusted partner of them, then you need to leverage that. That is a leveraged discussion and relationship. So, and getting non-competing referrals is a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think about some of our best customers probably came from referrals, probably came from other people telling, positive stories about us. And so I think that'd be something for us to think about. So 2 other things I want to kind of poke around on. There was this, I have a note here, and I think it was Danaher, but you're going to correct me. 18 million in revenue to 1.8 billion in revenue,
yeah, so that
and then going public.
Yeah, that was PSS. So right out of college, medical supply company based out of Jacksonville, Florida, called PSS. Pat Kelly was the founder, God rest his soul, phenomenal guy. And when I joined, it was 18 million. And when I left, it was 1.8 billion, and we were publicly traded with 3 divisions. It was a pretty cool ride. As my dad said, hey, you didn't get your MBA, but you did that 10-year period. So, I started as a sales trainee, cleaning toilets and delivering packages, and ended up being a divisional president when I left. So, that was a great example of a company that probably had the most powerful culture I've been a part of. Very unified message, like we talked about your messaging. Very dialed-in messaging. They had a thing called PSS Top 20. It was just a laminated card, and it was basically the core beliefs of the business. And that was it. Top 20, done, game over. Everybody had one in their wallet or purse. Driver through, branch president or whatever. What was crazy, though, is we were absolute zealots about sales. And so one thing Pat had is he said, all salespeople are right and all customers are right. I don't necessarily agree. 2 things I'll tell you. As a sales guy, I think more like a general manager, and I think everybody should think more like a general manager, thinking about their impact of their function and their role and what they're doing to others on the team. I think salespeople can make mistakes because they can chase a number. And so you got to make sure when they're chasing a number, are they chasing it with the right opportunities in their funnel, not the ones that are short-term and feel good, but end up creating bad precedents, right? You don't ever want to set a bad precedent, especially once the market knows, hey, you did it for so-and-so, you got to do it for me, and then you got your ass in a sling. The other part of it, too, is I think firing customers is a part of the business. And I remember when I first fired my first pediatric doctor, I spent 6 months getting his business. He was basically paying my apartment rent. He was a nice customer, but he stopped paying his bill. And so I went and called on him. I said, hey, Dr. Stone, you're 3 months behind. I'm going to have to shut your account down. And I said, or I can pick up a check today. He's like, well, can you give me another 30 days? I said, no, how about this? How about you're fired? You're done. I'll close your account. We're sending you to collections, or you can give me a check today. And he's like, but Kirk, and he had been probably my biggest account at that point. I got to tell you, as a young sales guy, I walked out of there feeling like I'd closed the biggest deal of my life. It felt great. Because he was disrespecting me, he was disrespecting PSS, he was disrespecting my team that was delivering to him and supporting his business. And it was over. The driver was like, this is awesome. That guy's a total jerk when I show up.
That guy sucks. I'm done with him.
Yeah, it felt great. And it was too bad because my best competitor took him over, which I was pretty happy about.
Yeah.
So enjoy that.
So how did, I'm thinking about, we're talking about going through some accelerated growth in potentially a short period of time. I mean, you went through massive growth. Like what are some learning lessons? Like what would you teach us or tell us that we're getting ready to undergo growth, potentially double the size of the organization, more people involved, more hands in the pot? Like what are some of the things that you've experienced that we need to keep in the back of our mind to make sure that we manage that growth successfully?
Yeah, so one thing that you said already that I really support is you're going to keep the TPM culture. So TPM culture is going to be king. Did y'all all hear the same thing? So the good news of that is you already know the culture. Now you have to be ambassadors of that culture to whoever joins the team. The other part of it is you might come across in your function with something the other company or other brand was doing that's kind of cool or better than what you're doing. Well, then you just get that incorporated. Now, you don't do it in a silo. I think you definitely, if it's anything major, I think you got to put it through the boss. But you say, hey, this is what they're doing. This is the impact it's having. I think we might want to add this into our mix. Huge synergies there, right? The word synergy I'm not a huge fan of, but that's where it happens is you get, right people in the right room having good discussions. But y'all are the ambassadors of the TPM culture to the new companies that join. And you got to bring them under the TPM wing. The other thing I would talk about is if you don't have regimented communication from you to your team, to your team, to their teams, and you're not having that consistently, and it's kind of hodgepodge or random or whenever, I would get that in place. And the reason I would do that is if you had 10,000 meetings, which by the way I think is about 9,000 too many, have weekly 1-over-1 meetings with your team and manage what has to happen. If it's urgent and it has to happen before the next meeting, fine. Handle that in a one-off and communicate rapidly and quickly. Do not let emails, if you guys are mostly here are y'all mostly local or are you remote?
Carolinas, yeah.
Yeah. So, manage it personally. Don't let email run the show. And the reason I say that is I think a forest fire on an M&A deal, when you bring new customers in or new people in, it can smolder and go to a fire real quick. So just be quick to say, hey, I'm not going to let email when they may open it. I'm going to call them right now and have that conversation. I'm going to tell them the context of why we're making this change or why we're doing this. So sharing context, overly communicate, but be consistent in your communication. I had a staff meeting every Tuesday at 9 a.m. I actually did 2 levels down. I did my directs for the first half hour, and then the next half hour was all of their main directs, their go-tos. And just making sure we shared context. Hey, this is what this week needs to happen. This is the priorities. This is what next week looks like. Are we on time? And then we also did a 1-hour meeting every week on action plan review, where we were truly reviewing what each person was accountable for. And there's some process intensity there, but I got to tell you, it actually creates freedom and efficiency if it's done right.
Yeah, I think about we host rhythm huddles on a weekly basis, and the problem with our business, we have so many different teams and rhythm huddles that it can be a little bit overwhelming, and so we've tried to kind of figure out that happy balance. But I love what you said about being the ambassador of TPM, because we are the core, we are the foundation, we are the engine by which we're going to leverage growth and scale. And so the responsibility to teach the other teams the culture of our business is not on me or the leadership team. It's got to be on all of us, right? And we have to be okay. We're going to fail, but if we have to be communicating, right? We have to be communicating and teaching them about our ways and what it is that we do, and just being that brand ambassador, not only for the customers, but also for these new companies.
The internal stuff's actually more important.
Right.
You can't get the outside stuff right if the inside stuff's not right.
Yeah.
So
I want to pivot. Kind of one last thing I wanted to hit on, and you said two things that I kind of view as interrelated, but I'm going to let you tell me if I'm right or not. One is you said, and I don't know the exact words, but show me a company that is perfectly run or has no problems, and I'll show you one that's losing money or not profitable. And then, we've talked about, and you have a business that you advise and coach on sales and revenue, and the value of revenue. Like revenue is the very first way to drive a profitable business.
It's the top of the P&L.
Right. And I think about sometimes, and I get caught into this as well, what I don't want us to become is the most well-run, non-profitable business in North America. You know what I mean? Like, we can get so caught up sometimes, I think, on rolling out new software and implementing new processes and working on the internal stuff, and it pulls us away from the revenue-generating activities that actually are going to drive the business forward. So I don't know if I inferred that correctly. I'm just kind of curious of that balance.
So the perfect company not profitable, it's because they never took risk. If you stay safe, you might have revenue, but you're probably not making a lot of money. There's not a risk taker, there's not a non-risk taker stock that you're probably going to want to buy. I think Tesla was a pretty big risk. I think NVIDIA, 10 years ago, if you'd bought it, you wouldn't be sitting here. That was a pretty big risk. They were talking about all this kind of stuff. So there's just a lot of stocks out there. I'd say even Danaher. Danaher, went public in late 80s, believe it or not. For the first 15 years, it was considered one of the strongest stocks in the country, including going against the tech stocks. And obviously been a part of seeing a lot of that stuff. So no risk. It's hard to be profitable. It's hard to grow. It's easy to stay safe. But in doing so, you have a risk of running out of cash or not growing, no growth, no money, right? I think that the latter part you were bringing up was more about make sure as you guys assess profitability and expansion, and you're looking at it right, is no mission can happen without margin. No margin, no mission. So if you ever come to, and I've been one of those sales guys, I've come to my sales leader and said, hey, got this deal, but I got to take it at this margin, it's pretty big, it's good revenue. I mean, the truck's still going there. Like, why don't we just throw it on the it's not no big cost difference, right? And early in my career, he's like, yeah, that's a really bad precedent, so we're not going to do that. And so I was looking at it like just a pure gross margin dollar scenario, but the reality of it wasn't even the dollars, it was the wrong precedent to set. And so just make sure you have a margin target in y'all's head by business that you should say, hey, this is kind of our threshold. This is the volume required to get these various price levels if there's deviation in pricing based off scale, and hold to it. And if your competitors figure it out, just outwork them. Who cares? I mean, the funniest thing is, when our competitors back in the day would get your price sheets. For those that remember the good old days when you had the price sheets and the big binder that was like 6 inches deep. You had it on the front.
Mike DeConing is nodding his head. Mike.
It was on that dot matrix printer. And like 12 hours later, you get one price book, and they're like, "Yours will be ready tomorrow morning." Okay, great. That price book, if a competitor got it, we would laugh because we're like, "Okay, so we left it in an account. They stole it. Beat me." I just gave you the answers to the open book test, and you still won't be able to beat me because I'll still outservice you, outwork you, and my customers will still stay loyal to me. And believe me, I had plenty of folks make a run at me on the med side, and definitely at YETI, everything else with knockoffs, trying to take us out in price. And brand wins every time.
Well, I think about customers that we've lost, and we don't lose a lot of customers, but when we do, it's easy for us to say, oh, they this, they that, whatever. But in every situation, even if they bought something less expensive, in every situation, we lost it because of us. We lost it because we weren't giving the customer the value they needed to remain a TPM customer. Typically, and you all have been in this scenario, no matter what role you're in here, is we've had customers that will advocate on our behalf, and they love us. And if some competitor comes in and tries to undercut us, they call us. They're like, hey, dude, just quick heads up, your competitor's over here, throwing a bunch of stuff. I'm sticking with you. But when we lose customers and you really digest it, they weren't getting the level of service. They weren't getting the level of expertise. They weren't getting the level of proactive care. So I think about losing customers, at least the ones that stick out in my mind, and oftentimes it's because of something we did and not our competitors, which gives me confidence to the fact that we can control it. So who gives a shit about our competitors, but let's focus on us.
So the thing I'd throw out there is there's a term called trusted advisor, and it's something I coach on. I feel very strongly about this. If you are not listening to your customer and asking them the proper questions, and when you don't know or you're assuming that you do know, you're going to find yourself in a jam. You should be on the customer's buying cycle, not putting them on your sales cycle. In other words, you've got, for the sales, who's a salesperson in the room? Everybody's hand should be up, by the way. But those that are actively in front of customers selling deals, what I would recommend you're doing is understand where they are in their buying cycle. And sometimes you're calling on these folks and they don't think they have a problem, right? And so you're trying to uncover a problem. But make sure you're having that discussion and you're bringing them along step by step. Because if you walk in and say, hey, this is a process I'm going to run them through, you're going to have a lot. Your conversion rate's going to be low. Your close rate's going to be low. Your success rate's going to be low. And your trust that you're going to build is going to be low. Get on their cycle, understand where they're at, move them along. And sometimes the pace is slower, sometimes the pace is faster, sometimes there's urgency, sometimes there's not. But manage and navigate that by bringing value into the next discussion, pulling them one step further. Next conversation, more trust, more value. Pull them a step further. Trusted advisor status, just to give you an idea of what that means to me, is that means that every client you call on, the owner of that business, cell phone is in your cell phone. That is when you've reached trusted advisor status. That means when stuff goes sideways and you got to make a call to the top guy or gal and apologize, you can call them on their cell. You can message them and say, hey, this is Kirk. I got something important to talk to you about. I got some bad news. I want to make sure you hear from me first. By the way, those conversations typically come out really well because, once again, you've established trust.
I think, and that goes back a bit to investing our time in the right customers that will move the needle forward for us, but also that we can make a significant impact on. It's not just about our revenue, it's about them. And so the people I think about, we've got some customers that I do have their cell phone numbers, right? And then I think about customers that I don't, or that we don't, right? And in order to get where we're trying to go and to do some of the advanced things that we're trying to do, we have to go deep. One of the analogies that we've talked a lot about internally is this iceberg concept. And I feel like for us, oftentimes we skip from iceberg tip to iceberg tip because there's so much stuff. We're trying to handle so many different customers and so many needs and so many different vendors and so many problems. So we just go from iceberg tip to iceberg tip when the bulk of the mass of the iceberg is under the water. And if we would just be willing to slow down and go deep, we would find significantly more value. So we might deal with 3,000 customers, every year. We could probably make that 300 customers and keep our revenue at the same level or higher. And so what I keep hearing from you is just this value of the relationship, like being proud in the value that we offer. We're not the cheap people. We don't want to be the cheap people. We're not the volume-based partner. Those are the Goliaths that we deal with in the space. We have to be David. We have to go deep. We have to value those relationships. We have to value the culture that we have. We have to bring solutions to the customer that's going to change their business so that we achieve that trusted advisor status, right. And they advocate on our behalf and they advocate on our brand. And I think it's any person in here, every one of you all deals with our customers in some regard. Everybody. There's not one person in this room, not one role that we have that will never talk to a customer. Everybody does. And so you're representing our brand. You're representing the TPM family brand, and we all have to wear that badge with honor and know what it means and know how to go deep and develop those relationships and make those customers successful.
Yeah, so the clearest thing I can tell you is when you do it, you'll know it, because they'll start calling you and talking to you about stuff that has nothing to do with what you do for them. That's when it gets... The first time I ever saw it happen, I was actually in the urology medical device business, and the urologist called me and he started talking to me about his business, and it was about something that had nothing to do with my technology or what I was doing. He's like, you know all the best urologists, you're working with all the best guys. I need your opinion on this. And I was like, I'm a history major from Hampton City College. Didn't you go to like Duke or something? But the point is, it was a moment where he trusted me and he trusted my opinion. And I just said, hey, doc, it's one man's opinion. But it was, I figured that out, in my early 30s when I started selling medical device. But it's a huge thing when you get it. And once you get it, understand that you rarely want to take a deposit out on that deal. You want to make deposits, no withdrawals. Just load in the deposits. Keep putting in the goodwill. Keep doing the right thing. Keep taking the high road. But hold them accountable. Holding them accountable is not doing a withdrawal. You're making promises. They got to reciprocate a promise and commitment back to you to protect your brand. Remember, you're selling a premium product with no apologies.
I'm going to close with a story that I probably shouldn't share, but the good news is that we can edit this out of the podcast. So I had a friend in college. I won't name him. He was kind of like the party guy. He was the fun, happy-go-lucky guy. When I graduated from Clemson, a lot of my friends went to medical device. That was like the big thing, right? They want to get in medical device sales, and this one guy, this one friend, always wanted to be in the medical device space, and he could never get a job in the pharma sales. And so he kept trying. He lived in Charlotte. So one day he's coming through Greenville, and he calls me. Hey, dude, I'm in Greenville for the night. Are you here? I'm like, yeah, man, come on by. So he came by our house, and can I say this? Okay, well, I'm going to say it. And he comes by the house. He's like, dude, I'm in the pharma sales. And I'm like, sweet, man, congratulations. He said, yeah, dude, I'm selling to urologists. And I'm like, oh, super cool. I said, what does that mean? What are you selling? And he's like, well, I'm selling pumps. And I was like, when you say you're selling pumps, what do you mean you're selling pumps? He's like, I'm selling,
I would have listened to your wife.
Yeah. And he's like, yeah. He's like, I gotta fit them on the person and make sure they work and all that sort of stuff. And I'm fired up. He's like, I got one in the car. You want me to go get it? And I was like, no, I'm good. That's my urology story. We can edit that out of the podcast.
Little ADD.
It's like squirrel.
Yeah, no, I did not do that part of urology.
Okay, good. Well, I was not implying that you did.
Yeah.
But I would just say for Built with Purpose, just kind of wrapping us up, Kirk. I think there's so many things that the audience can take away, but also I think hopefully our organization can take away about companies that are significantly larger. That we can manage it. A lot of things that we're doing today work at a much larger scale. I think about our rhythm process that we're running ourselves through. I think about trying to make sure we're focusing on revenue. I think about focusing on our ideal customer profile and really leaning into the customers that we can have a much deeper relationship with. I mean, everything you're saying that works at $1 billion scale works at our scale. And in my mind, just gives me confidence that we can do this thing, man.
Absolutely. I'll close with this. As you guys go through the change you're getting ready to go through this year, there's going to be moments of stress. That comes with the job and the opportunity. No stress, no gratitude, no progress. Strain, the leaders in this room need to make sure the strain is not there. Stress is manageable. Strain creates damage, creates pain, could be residual pain. Help your teams get through the stressful part and manage the strain. The leaders have to kind of shoulder the strain, but it's going to be worth it. And you're going to also find out time speeds up real quickly when you start doing these kind of things. M&A is a lot of fun, but it's also a lot of unknowns. Just be transparent with each other. Be consistent in communication, and you guys will do great. You got a great culture already. I can see a lot of good stuff here. So congratulations again.
Well, thank you, man. I appreciate it. I'm glad you're here, and thanks for listening to Built with Purpose. Follow us on social media, and Kirk, thanks for being here. Okay, thanks for joining me on Built with Purpose. If you have enjoyed today's episode, subscribe, share, and leave us a review. It helps more bold leaders find the show. For resources and show notes, visit our website and connect with me, Chris Fay, on LinkedIn. Until next time, keep building great companies, cultures, and legacies with purpose.